Yeah, likewise.
Cool. Where are you located?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Oh, cool. The City of Angels. Right on. Right on.
That's right. That's
I'm
right.
in I'm in the center of the country. I'm in Kansas City. So,
Nice.
home a bird. Nice to meet you. Hey, before we get into love and small spaces, I'd
hmm
love to know first and foremost, we all about 4 years ago we were all looking at this pandemic trying to figure out what it was going to do. Now we know. How did you get through it and how did it change you?
That's a great question. Well, for me, I actually auditioned for a master's program in February of 2020, called the Herbie Hancock Institute, which is located in Los Angeles. And I got accepted into that in, I think it was late February. And then about a month later is when all the pandemic things really started. Well, a few weeks later is really when all the pandemic stuff started to happen. So I had known that I was going to move to LA, but then all of that got put on hold for a year. So like my program that I attended actually deferred for a year. So I stayed in New York for a year, and that was in a way it was nice to have more time in a place like that. But in another way, it wasn't really like being there in any other time, just because I just spent most of my time in my little studio apartment, and when I got out, it was just to go on walks. So I think things like, just trying to get out and into nature when I could, or just doing a lot of like studying of music, those things were really what helped me probably get through it. And I think as artists, or I guess people in general, we always talk about, things we wish we had time to get into or check out or study, whatever that is. And for me, that was like a good time to like dig into some of the music that had always inspired me that maybe I wanted to take a closer look at. So yeah, those are some of the different things that kind of probably helped me through. And then I think always looking toward the future, knowing that I was going to move to Los Angeles and attend this master's program was really honestly a really great thing to have, that I knew like eventually would come, whatever was happening in the world. So I was really grateful for that, especially, I had so many friends and peers in New York and across the world that, all of us were looking to the future, like what, yeah, like everybody,
Yeah.
what's going to happen, how are we going to make what we do work in the future? What's that going to look like? And so, yeah, it was definitely a, a rocky time for everyone, but yeah, here we are. We made it. So,
Yeah, we survived. So it sounds like this album title was almost an outgrowth. Love in Small Spaces. Was that kind of an outgrowth of that time period?
yeah, definitely. That track specifically was definitely inspired by that. I live with my wife now, but at the time we were dating, and we lived together throughout the whole quarantine time. And we lived in a really small studio apartment. So she worked like a 9 to 5 job, and I obviously had a more unconventional schedule. So it was really difficult to try to, like balance how, okay, you have a meeting at this time, I'm doing this, making noise is basically what I do for a living. So we need to find a way to come together and make that work. And so, yeah, that was definitely a piece that was inspired by that time, I think there's, as artists, we find ways to um, embrace like the environment around us. And I think, just trying to be present in the moment. And if that's, what the moment is, then, embracing it and trying to use that in some positive way for me was kind of the goal, with at least with a lot of the music I was writing in that time. And definitely a lot of the music on this record and in this project was like an outgrowth of that time. And then like, bringing it to real, bringing it into reality, hearing it played by real musicians, in the couple years after the process of like writing it, tinkering with it, playing it on like the piano or the bass or something for a while. It was really like a interesting process in that way.
So you had mentioned moving to LA and you mentioned New York. So take me back to the beginning. Where were you born and raised, and how did the seeds of not only music, but more specifically jazz become a part of your world?
Mhm. So I'm from Iowa City, Iowa, actually, so not too far from you, a little
Yeah.
north.
Yeah.
So I grew up there. My dad's family is like almost everybody has a career in visual arts in my dad's side of the family. So I grew up kind of around that. And Iowa City is like where the University of Iowa is. So my family kind of worked there, taught there, did a lot of different things there. So that was kind of always present. And I think growing up in like a college town in the Midwest, you get exposed to an interesting intersection of different things. Like on one hand, there's all these academics and really highly educated people who are super specialized in what they're doing, and there's like a great music school there. And so I would go to like orchestra concerts as a kid, and then also you get like the vibe of the Midwest. People who at least to me are easygoing and nice, kind, and maybe the pace is a little slower than a place like New York, which I really enjoy and miss now that I don't live there anymore. But so yeah, growing up there, it kind of got a cross section of a lot of those different things. And my parents were really big, like jazz fusion fans. So when I was like a kid, most of the music I heard was either like classical music or like Weather Report, Return to Forever, Herbie Hancock, Headhunters type stuff. Some like Dave Grusin. So those were like some of the first things I was hearing, maybe that I really consciously remember thinking, oh, this is really cool. What's going on with this? And then when I was a young kid, my parents, I asked them to get like a video game system, and they said, well, we don't really want you to have video games, me and my younger brother. So instead, like pick an instrument and we'll, get you that instrument and you can take lessons and learn how to play the instrument. And so I guess I just picked electric bass maybe because every time we'd drive around in the car, Jocko or Stanley Clark or something was playing, and I just thought that was such a cool sound. So yeah, I started playing bass at a young age and violin at the same time in orchestras, and kind of just went through the like public school system there. Did music through high school, and then when it came time for college, I auditioned at a bunch of the like normal music schools. Most people who are really serious about like studying jazz audition at a lot of New York schools, East Coast schools, and I ended up going to Eastman School of Music in Rochester, New York. So I was there for 4 years and then stayed for a little bit after, and then I moved to New York to freelance basically starting in around 2016, 17. And yeah, then I was there until about 2021, and now Los Angeles since then.
So what was the first live show you ever saw that blew you away?
Oh man.
Jazz or otherwise?
Yeah, I think there's two that really stand out in my mind. One was when I was probably they were around the same age, like 13 or 14. Pat Metheny trio with Christian McBride and Antonio Sanchez. That was around when that project was happening, and they did a concert at like it's called the Hancher Auditorium in Iowa City, Iowa, where the university is. And I remember going to that, and it was one of those experiences where I think maybe kids experience this a lot, where I didn't have any idea what was going on, like structurally or formally or whatever. I hadn't really ever heard a lot of music like that live, and but it was just amazing, like what they were doing, and I was just blown away by their musicianship and by the way they could communicate like a story to the audience, and that really like impressed me, and also just their ability to play their instruments was just never seen anything like that before. So that, and then interestingly, around the same time is when some Green Day record called American Idiot came out, which was like definitely a very topical record at the time, like the pop punk world. And I was like a 13-year-old kid, and I thought that was just the coolest thing ever. And they were doing a tour, and they did a concert in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which is not that far away from where I'm from. My parents took me to that, and like the first thing they did when they came out on stage is they just like screamed at the audience and yelled a bunch of like swear words and just was super loud and fast. And I thought, wow, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like, this seems like it's just like totally wild. And so I think that also stuck out to me. Maybe at the time, I think it was just like a really like visually and sonically like a crazy thing. And as I got older, I think I realized like the lasting impression like even something like that made on me, even if that's not necessarily like the music I'm making now. Just like having experiences like that where you're just like so blown away and you can't really, you're not even, at least for me, like I'm not really thinking about the minutia or the nuts and bolts of what's going on. It's just you're so hit with just the power of what's happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are probably the two that stick out for me. Yeah, as a
So
kid.
right on. So being at this for a little while now, what do you like the best about being a professional musician?
Hmm. It's really hard to pick one thing, I think. Like, I think the older I get, the thing I really enjoy the most is probably seeing how people's personalities and maybe their unique background like comes out in their music. So, you know, I think when I was younger, I really loved like just the experience of um, playing, like the energy you get from playing music from with people. And I think as I've gotten older, I've started to appreciate like the energy those people have as humans and the way they bring that into their music making process. So, you know, as a person from Iowa, from the Midwest, like it's living in a big city like Los Angeles, it's rare that I meet people with similar backgrounds to me, especially doing what I do. And so I think in that way, I really appreciate, like, I try to appreciate where people are coming from and what's inspiring them. And then I think for me, it's fun to like try to see, oh, this person is like, they're kind of a joker. They don't take themselves super seriously, and then see how that comes across in their music. Or maybe this person is like really perceptive and thinking a lot about what's going on around them, or maybe this person is aloof or whatever it is, you know. And I think the older I get, like the more I realize great musicians, they're just extensions of their personalities. And it's just like almost a distilled down, in a way, version of what they're like as people. I think the best musicians have a way of, you know, expressing that that uniqueness of themselves to others and to listeners. And I think as I get older, that's been the thing that I really have been enjoying the most in recent years, probably. Yeah.
So why do you love jazz?
Mm, that's fine. It's like such a difficult question to answer. I'm sure you hear that all the time, but
Yeah.
I think for me, like, I came into it because I thought the possibilities of it were just endless. And then, you know, you go through a time where you're like deeply studying the minutia of the music, you're getting in the weeds of how it's put together and structured and what makes it tick and what makes it work and how do you make things happen. And then I think eventually, you know, you come to the other side of that, or in some way, it's not like you've stopped focusing on the nuts and bolts, but you start to, for me at least, I started to realize like it really is about possibilities. It really is about like being able to express yourself in the moment and be able to take a piece of music that maybe has been played thousands of times before and make it unique and make a personal statement on that. I think that's expressive of who you are, but also who you are as a group, maybe. So I think that element of it, like the possibilities of how you can just always be personal with it, and then how you can maybe shape that too in a collective way with other musicians. You know, like I love, you know, trying to approach playing a song differently every time I play it, but so much of that is informed by the people I'm playing with. Like it kind of goes back to what I was saying before, like those people's personalities, their perspectives, their presence in the moment and what's going on. So I think like the combination of all those things can, when done well or when done at its best, can be like can really be super expressive and can transport a listener to maybe like a place they haven't been before. You know, at least in the way it did that for me as a kid when I went and saw like some of those concerts I was mentioning too. You know.
Yeah. Well, speaking of concerts, what's coming up with you for live shows? Where's the best place for people to get the new album? All of the good business.
Yeah. So I'm doing a couple release shows this summer. I'm doing one at this venue called Sam First, which is a great
Yeah.
jazz club in Los Angeles.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's been a really great place to play since I moved here. They are really great. They've helped kind of foster the Los Angeles jazz community through the pandemic. I think, one of the other really classic Los Angeles clubs, the Blue Whale, closed
Yeah.
in 2020. And it seemed, at least as a newcomer to the Los Angeles scene, it seemed like Sam First kind of became the de facto, hub for a lot of those musicians. And they've just grown and become a better and better place. And so I was really honored that when I asked them if I could do a release show there, they were interested in doing it. So yeah, that's happening June 20th. And then I'm actually doing a show at the Iowa City Jazz Festival, where I'm from,
Yeah.
uh, on July 6th, I think. It's a Saturday. And that's at 4 p.m. And we're going to play an hour set. And we'll probably just play, music from the record. And then that festival always has a great lineup. I know Matt Wilson has a band that's playing right after us, and then I think Lakeisha Benjamin closes out the night. So for me, as like as a person who's early in my career, it's just an honor to be able to play in these places and to just get my music out there. So yeah, and
Yeah.
then you can listen to it on like all streaming services.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Music, all the different places.
Yeah. Well, and for anyone out there that doesn't understand, that may not realize it, that Iowa City Festival is one of the biggest ones in the world, and that's kind of a homecoming for you. So it's going to
Yeah.
have to just be compounded by everything. So
I'm super excited for it. As a kid growing up, I always went to that festival, and then I played at it in, school bands and stuff as a kid growing up. So to be able to bring my own music there and to bring some of my peers out from the West Coast to the Iowa City community, I'm really excited about that as well. So
right
that'll
on.
be a fun experience. I'm looking forward to that.
Excellent. This has been wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for opening up.
Yeah,
Best of luck with the album. I appreciate it, man.
thank you. Yeah, it's great to meet you.
Yeah.